What's up, everybody? I'm here with my friend Michael Montoya. You may know him from his old band Goliath or his current band Winds of Plague, but what I wanted to talk about is rap, because Michael is my secret weapon whenever I want to know what's going on with rap. Anything that I know about rap these days is probably something he told me. So that's what I want to talk about all the crossover happening now between rock and metal and rap. He's kind of at the forefront of that, so I wanted to maybe pick his brain about that a little bit, and thought you guys might find that interesting.
My producer name is Morgoth Beatz, and yeah, I produce for people like Bones, Lil Xan, Odd Future, Scarlxrd, some stuff coming out with Zillakami and Lil Nar, and a bunch of different people like that who people consider like the new trap metal.
I remember, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago when you were working with Andrew, who used to be in Winds of Plague, at his studio doing a bunch of like metal stuff.
Yep.
And you were also doing rap stuff back then. And I remember I thought you were stupid for thinking you could do both.
Yep.
Because back then there really wasn't any kind of crossover, and turns out you were right and I was wrong.
Well, it's kind of funny because when I started like realizing it happened more and more was, again, this like, proverbial like slide, let's say, of going from like little things adding up to where the music starts reflecting rock more, where people want guitars in their beats a lot more, and people go from kind of what Tyler was doing where he's screaming kind of, but then you get people like legitimately being like, oh, let's like just scream like I'm in a metal or punk band. And I think kind of when that group of rappers or people who might have otherwise been in bands started realizing how much easier it is to start a rap career than it is to make a band blow up, because it's just you can go online and find the beats you want.
Yeah, you don't even have to make the beat. You just go look up whatever type beat.
Exactly. And say you're a vocalist, and maybe being in a band isn't the most important thing to you, but making music is the most important thing to you. And the easiest way to do it is you get a beat you like. Say you're a screamer, you can do that now. People like, people I produce for, like Scarlxrd definitely is pushing that very far. Bones, I think I would credit him as the originator of it. Obviously, we know about Broken Side, right? But I think
that was an accident.
That was definitely an accident. That was an accident, but wow, how funny it is to look back at that. But Bones was the first I heard where it was in over his music, so it was a lot more moody and it wasn't like party,
Yeah.
And I think screaming works a lot more when it's not like party rage,
right.
Like what crunkcore was or whatever. That's why I don't think people took it seriously. But when people heard him do it, I think it sounded a lot more natural over the kind of beats he had already. And so first time I heard him do that, plus he kind of started the emo rap stuff too, where I think Grief is the producer who was like kind of one of the main dudes who was doing like the acoustic sad beats with the trap drums over it, and Bones would sing like he was in the emo band, not like R&B singing. I think that's one thing too that is a clear difference, that a lot of people who, if they're not into alternative rock and they're just kind of listening to this, they're just hearing singing, which is cool, but like when you really kind of dive into it, there's different genres have different vocal inflection ideas, and what like a Juice WRLD and a Little Peep and an XXX and like what all the Trippie Redd, like the vocal melodies they're doing are very clearly from, I'm just using alternative rock as a blanket statement because you can fill in.
Like Juice WRLD's, the vocal melodies 100% sound like MySpace emo to me.
Yeah, totally.
Like exactly the same melody.
Because that sense of like melody is kind of unmistakable, where R&B doesn't do those high whiny inflections like that and make that like the center like focus of your vocal, and that's what like Uzi does, and that's what all these people do. And I think that kids who grew up on stuff like Fall Out Boy and nu metal and like pop punk and all that like that style of singing already. So I think that's why you see it resonate so much with teenagers and like people in their like 20s and stuff, and like the older generation doesn't really understand it quite as much because they weren't listening to that like growing up, so to them it probably sounds weird,
right,
with people like Juice WRLD and stuff who has come out and said like Ronnie Radke's like his favorite singer, and
so that's a misperception that I think a lot of people have, is because there was a time where people would wear a Slayer shirt or something just because they thought it looked cool.
Yeah,
they didn't actually like Slayer, and that was true at the time. But Now, if one of these kids is wearing a Morbid Angel shirt, it's probably because he likes Morbid Angel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I'm still even working out like how the level of how deep that really goes. Like with that new artist I was telling you, I found like Lucifena, like for example, like one thing I think that's gonna work for her is she comes from like a metal background, you know. Yeah, she was in a band called You Only Live Once, and she can scream like, I think the thing that makes it different with her is she can scream like she's in a deathcore band, you know, like she can do all the highs, the lows, but she can sing really well too and stuff, so there's like diversity there. But anyways, like what we were saying with people coming from bands, I think a lot of that, it has to do with like the artists themselves who are otherwise probably the kind of people who would have joined a band. Like, I think that if...
Or were in a band.
Like, Ghostemane, you know. I mean, Shakewell is probably the biggest example of... But I think there's... Like, Shakewell is an interesting example because Shakewell makes kind of, like, street rap more so than he does, like, emo or metal influenced anything. He's more on, like, some hood shit. Rap. Yeah, so he's more on some hood shit, and he's kind of always been that dude. So I don't think, like... I think... For him, like the fact he was in a band is like a cherry on top than like the focus of the conversation. When like someone like a Juice WRLD or like a Uzi, when like what they're doing like musically is very clearly like representing something else, you know, or like a Xan has emo rap songs, you know. So I think that's really where it comes in, is when you start to get in a couple examples here and there, and then it's like you're a singer or you're a rap, and you just have to be able to rap. You don't even have to be able to really rap nowadays. You could, like, honestly, interesting at all that, like, the term rap is...
It's like Juice WRLD doesn't really rap.
He does, you know? Post Malone, like... Yeah, when people... They
just have 808s, but it's just basically like emo with 808s.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's... If you were to put, like, a pop-punk rhythm section behind one of their songs, like, their vocals would just naturally fit, like... very well, and which you can find that on the internet. Like I'll do that. I'll go around and watch people's like pop punk cover versions of like these songs just to see how they work in like that aspect, and usually they always work.
Right. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which I don't know the answer to this, but I feel like it's got to be the case that these rappers are getting people interested in rock who might otherwise have not been as interested in it. Like, you know, like the example I've used is like Marilyn Manson. You know, like Uzi loves Marilyn Manson. He's always wearing Marilyn Manson shirts and talking about Marilyn Manson. There's got to be some kid going, oh, what's, you know, because people like us, you know, we're the kind of people that in the past we would have discovered bands because we would see, oh, what sticker is on Jeff Hanneman's guitar? Right. Oh, Dead Kennedys? Who's that? You know? Definitely. And kids now are going to do the same thing, but they're going to say, oh, well, Yachty likes Pierce the Veil. Who's that?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I think that's, I don't know,
definitely how I feel, where a lot of this too was kind of me figuring out like, okay, like looking at what the SoundCloud scene was like then and seeing how much this style was like blowing up, and it was kind of one of those things like, do I participate now or get upset that I didn't participate, because it's going in that direction whether like one individual likes it or not, and it's just like the flow of it, so you might as well try and participate in it. So I think that when I see like people with band shirts and like finding out who other people are going to find out about bands via like Post Malone talking about him, I think he was in Crown, like he tried out for Crown the Empire,
which for sure that's the way that a lot of people heard about that band. How many of them ended up listening to Crown the Empire, I don't know, but there's a ton of people that had never heard of that band before.
Totally. And I think that when you see I think it's good for the genre, because you're going to see people discover bands otherwise they wouldn't have. Like, does it really matter how they discovered them, you know? And I'm totally fine. I would rather participate in this, which to me, it reminds me of like what nu metal was, where it's like instead of metal bands having influence from their favorite rappers and producers and like having a hip hop element to it, like with Korn and Slipknot and Deftones and all that, it's like flipped, where it's like rappers and producers being influenced from bands, and that reflecting through their music, like, but it's still on the hip hop side versus like the metal side, you know? So I think that when you see people in merch, I think part of that is with the technology and they just have like stuff like music videos figured out better, and like their aesthetic to the hip hop world, like people wearing pentagrams and like, you know, death metal band shirts and stuff like that is still like really edgy and and cool, and like they've never seen it before, you know. But even though that's been done in metal for so long,
it's like a metal band wearing a Biggie shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now you see that dangerous like aesthetic or whatever is kind of easy to play into with what you see with people like Ghostemane or even just mainstream rappers. Like I think the like how they've desensitized people to like occult imagery has kind of also the little extra stuff from rock kind of went through like with the guitars, and they want to be called rock stars, not rappers.
Right.
That's partially due to like them thinking Kurt Cobain was cooler than what their parents were listening to in the 90s, you know.
Was it who was it that had the Naruto? Was it Uzi that had the Naruto thing on Twitter? Yeah. So Lil Vert had a Naruto character called Pain as his Twitter avatar, and said, what did he say about?
Should I pull up the lyrics?
Yeah, but anyway, whatever. He was talking about Pain from Naruto on Twitter and talks about Marilyn Manson. And to me, it's like I don't understand why people have such a hard time like recognizing the obvious.
Yeah,
he's a nerdy kid that grew up on Marilyn Manson and anime. Like, how is this hard to believe?
Anime is great. It's great you bring up anime too, because if you want to understand like their look and their whole image, and almost more so than anything really is like the anime look, the way that everyone's like coloring their dreads and stuff. I almost feel like that has more to do with them wanting to look like anime villains than it does to do with them wanting to look like the casualties.
Yeah,
you know what I
they're
mean?
trying to look like a Final Fantasy character.
Yeah, and I think that with the face tattoos and like all that, I think that the rock stuff is an easy like way for them to do that via like through a musical lens. But I think what they're seeing is like they're making themselves into like villain, like you can be them for Halloween,
right?
You know, which is a very important like branding thing I think nowadays for artists. Like same with like when like I love putting Xan in like a hardcore shirt and just watching the internet just like wander forever to try and figure out what's going on in the shirt, which is hilarious because, you know, like I gave him a Vane shirt and everyone just like is either really upset or like he has fans for life now because he wore a Vane shirt, you know. Or like when he wears our shirt and stuff like that. And I think part of that is it's just naturally what came, like because a couple years ago everyone was wearing Metallica shirts. Like where does that go? You know, if you just follow the breadcrumb trail from punk and rap, like one of the other ways I kind of want to, because I've put way more thought into this than I probably should have, but you know, when you're trying to predict something around the corner so you can, like, I know I'm not like the best at anything, you know, that I see myself as, but I figure if I can figure something out and get a head start, then other people from this world, when they all start figuring it out and start doing it, then, you know, I'll be further along. Because it kind of reminds me of, do you remember how prog rock kind of gave way to punk rock?
Yeah.
In terms of, like, you had bands like Yes, and
they were getting so elaborate and like, maybe from a technical perspective, it's amazing, and from a musicianship perspective, it's amazing. They're geniuses, and I love prog rock. But people thought it was just overwrought and too like baroque and
and I think that's what's happening in a different way. Where like with the Ramones coming, I can only imagine the conversation that like prog rock musicians had when talking about a band like the Ramones.
They can't even play their instruments.
Yeah, exactly. But all these kids jump around and like moshing is invented and pogoing and all this like stuff, which that reminds me of how it is now, where you have all these people who are great lyricists and they can write like the most insane stories, which there's totally a cool place for that. But there's never really been moshing at hip hop shows before, like this generation, like the way there is now. And a part of that is because people like Lil Pump and like Xan and all these Uzi and all these people who are making their music for that, like specifically, and like the mentality of making your music for that versus making the music for people to sit there and like really like analyze what you're saying and like what kind of beats you use. Like I think that's a big placement from like the boom bap beats being turned to like halftime beats, you know, where it's similar to breakdowns. Yeah, because that's how I would make.
It's like hardcore in a lot of ways is dance music.
It is, you know, 100%.
And so is Lil Pump, you know, and in the same way as hardcore is.
Yeah, like the way you write like these kind of like trap metal or like emo, or the same way you write hardcore, like especially like the mosh version of that style, or the same way you make electronic music. It's like that's when people ask me like, how do you do like multiple genres and stuff like that? For me, it's just like you find like a commonality and you just kind of get good at it, and then all you're really changing is just like the sound design. So like with EDM and stuff, you know, it's like a build,
Right.
Like, same way you build to a breakdown, and it's just like a drop, you know. However
Yeah,
that
do the China.
Yeah, exactly. Just or like you know, it's like a blast beat, like tension before you release the tension, you know. And it's if you can just nail tension and release, you can fake people into thinking your shit's a lot sicker than it is, you know. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Just kind of like trying to see what I could pull over from metal, and luckily for me, the seas have blown in that way where that's what people want. To where like all the stuff I've been applying now really like works because I've spent so many years before like writing heavy songs.
Yeah.
Now it's just kind of like inventing it in a different way into a different genre, you know, that still isn't very established. I mean, the emo rap is like the biggest form of music like in the world at the moment, pretty much. If it's like at the very least, when you have people like Drake and like even Drake isn't, I wouldn't call him an emo rapper, but he's a precursor to what that was.
He's in that same side of the spectrum for sure.
Same way like Kanye and like Cudi and all that kind of. They were very influential to
Travis
like
Scott.
Exactly. They had to have helped set that wave for like all the band influence to come through, you know, because like it couldn't have just gone from like Rick Ross to Juice WRLD, you know. There had to be something.
It'd be a little weird.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, there you go. You got a chance to pick the brain of a pioneer of this whole like metal rap thing. I'm excited for all the stuff that you've accomplished so far, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do next. So make sure you follow this guy. I'll put a link here. Make sure you follow this guy on Instagram and SoundCloud and see what he's up to. And yeah, check out, I don't know, what's next for Winds of Plague? Do you have anything you want to plug there?
Well,
tour's going to be over by the time anybody sees this.
But we'll have more stuff coming out in the near future. You can just look, you know, just keep an eye out. We'll have more tours and, you know, work on new music, all that good stuff. And then I have a bunch of stuff coming out with Lucifena Girl, more Lil Xan stuff, Lil Nars, Illikami, like a bunch more rap stuff, more stuff with bands, Issues album. Yeah, just trying to do as many styles. Be like a little Rick Rubin.
Metalcore Puff Daddy.
You heard?
That's this guy.